Hi, Kitplanes readers. This is Mark Cook, your editor-in-chief. I'm here with Mark Goldberg with Bearhawk Aircraft, and if you've been reading the news, you know they just introduced a Model 5. It's a big evolution of the Bearhawk design. Mark, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. First of all, walk me through sort of the design process. How did you guys decide to build such a big airplane?
This was not, when you say we, this was Bob Barrow's decision. Our most recent to play side by side, the companion, I had to push Bob to kind of do that because of interest by customers. But this actually was prompted by a friend of Bob's in Virginia named Jerry. And Jerry's a big guy, and he was interested in a Bearhawk and a four-place, but he wanted a bigger airplane. So he worked with Bob, and Bob really did a set of drawings just for Jerry. And Jerry started building it. We supplied him a set of quick build wings for it from the factory. And Jerry started working on it, got the tail surfaces done, the fuselage was tacked and tack welded, but then Jerry had some health problems. So it kind of sat there in his shop for probably a couple or 3 years. And, it was really not going anywhere. So Bob, would talk to me about it sometimes and say, what should we do with this? It's just sitting there, and I don't think Jerry's ever going to, have the time or interest to finish it since his health is kind of going to preclude him from ever flying it. And he, there it sat. And one day I was talking with Colin Campbell, who is a very accomplished builder. He scratch built from plans alone a four-place Bearhawk, then a Patrol. Then he called me and asked for an LSA kit. He told me he was getting too old for this scratch building stuff anymore. And so he built out and is flying Bearhawk LSA. And he told me, he says, Mark, God, I finished this LSA about 6 months ago. I really need a project. I'm getting bored. He's just somebody who wants to be out in the shop and working, that makes him happy. So the light bulb sort of came on, and I called Bob. I said, Bob, this Colin would be an absolutely fantastic person to finish off the Model 5.
That's great. Now, obviously, if you're familiar with the Bearhawk designs, you kind of know the basic idea of how it comes together in the construction of the airplane. How does this kind of differ? I know it's bigger in a few dimensions, but kind of tell me some of the details about how this differs from the previous designs.
It doesn't differ in a lot of ways from the current production four-place Model B Bearhawk. It's just wider and longer. The shock struts are set up slightly differently with the rod end bearing at the top and the bottom rather than just at the top. And the other difference is really of any consequence is it's built, designed to accept one of the heavier angle valve 540 engines, and I put the 580 in mine due to the help from Lycoming. So really, all of Bob's designs are super similar in how they go together, how they're designed, etc. So it's kind of an incremental improvement, not really a lot of differences in how they go together.
So really what you've done is taken a successful design and sort of maximize some dimensions so that it's really good for the larger pilots, as you mentioned, or people who want to carry more passengers, or probably in your utility realm, you've got a lot of guys who want to go hunting with it or camping with it, and they really value having that extra interior volume. I know in some of the press material I've seen, the interior volume is pretty substantial, and it stacks up pretty well against a certain Cessna we know.
That is absolutely true. Our older Model B four-place Bearhawk is really bigger than a Cessna 180 from what I understand. And I believe this new Model 5 is significantly bigger than a 185 Cessna. So there's a ton of room back there. The guys in New Zealand can land out in the bush, kill that big red deer, those gigantic deer that they have, and put it in the back of the airplane and fly home with no worries.
Well, that sounds great. So where are we in the process of building kits and plans and things like that for the consumer? Let's say one of our readers wants to build one now. What's the process?
Well, it's just starting, us building the tooling to make the kit. The wings are identical to the existing Model B four-place wings. They are 3,000-pound gross wings. And the fuselage is where we're going to have to do the tooling for. They've started making the tail surfaces, the tooling for the tail surfaces already. And I need Bob to finish up the plans. Colin, when he was building it, found, of course, a few things that could be done a little bit better or differently than what Bob originally envisioned. And Colin, with his background, is really uniquely qualified to work with Bob. So Bob, I have tasked Bob. I'm trying not being too much of a pest and putting too much pressure on him, but we're trying to get those plans from Bob now so that we can really go to town on all the tooling for the fuselage at the factory. Our hope is we have all the tooling done by around the 1st of July, and about mid-July, I'll send down the materials for the first production run of kits, and we hope to have the first kits in October, which is what I promised the two guys that have already anteed up and sent me deposits for kits.
That's great. Now, for people not familiar with the Bearhawk, kind of walk me through the materials. And I mean, from a distance, it looks like a pretty conventional, bush-style airplane. But I'm sure, knowing that it comes from Bob's fertile imagination, there's some interesting stuff in there.
Well, it is largely traditional in the way it's done. The fuselage is a steel tube, 4130 steel tube fuselage. Bob lays it out very good. It's strong as can be, but very light. If you look at Bob's fuselage compared to others, the tubing count is much less due to Bob's design, the way he goes about it, because weight is very critical for Bob. He really puts a lot of attention to building light, and covered with the fabric process that a customer would want. There's several that are most commonly used, but that's really a personal preference of the builder. The wings are all aluminum wings, aluminum spar with built-up cap strips, kind of like the earlier RVs with riveted cap strips. And the skins are all aluminum wings. They're skinned, the Model 5 and the 4-place are skinned in 025 and 032. And the less gross weight designs, the skin goes down in thickness a little bit, but it's largely conventional. All of Bob's designs use a riblet, a hairy riblet designed airfoil. Bob worked with Mr. Riblet when he was still alive and came up with some airfoils that we really like and have proven to be great performers, both at the high end and the low speed handling of them. Of that riblet airfoil is very safe and nice.
That's good stuff. So I know that as part of going to a 3,000-pound gross weight, you guys have upgraded to the big Lycoming. Now I know that you'll accommodate even the lower horsepower versions of that, but I imagine with the IO 580, which I think makes 315 horsepower, that's got to be a pretty good performer.
It's kind of off the scale powerful. Most guys have never flown an airplane with that kind of power, and really the same statement is true when you get into a 4-place Bearhawk with the 250, 260 horse engine. It's really screamer takeoff and climb. And, the empty weight of the Model 5 is more or less, the Model 5 that Colin built is about the same weight as my 4-place, which has 250 horsepower. And with 65 more horsepower than my airplane, it's really something. The prop that's on the Model 5 now is a prop that Hartzell gave me to try. And I shouldn't say this, but one of these days they're going to ask me to pay for it. But hopefully that'll be a little while down the road. But it's their 3-blade Trailblazer, their carbon fiber Trailblazer in 82-inch diameter. And we flew it first on my 4-place, and it cut the takeoff roll down about 30% from what the 2-blade metal that had been on it for so long did. And now it's on the Model 5, and it's doing fantastic. They're seeing takeoff runs, kind of, hold your brakes, give it some power, and sort of simulate, a high performance takeoff. They're seeing 210 to 250 feet. And the tires that are on the airplane are just 850s, and the angle of attack with that longer tail is sort of harming the ability to get off shorter. We're certain that with some bigger tires, which will be on it relatively soon, that it's going to help the takeoff distance at least some.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, listen, I want to thank you for spending a few minutes with us this morning. We're obviously really looking forward to when you get through your flight test and you're happy with how this airplane is coming together. definitely one of us is going to come out and do some flying with you guys. I know we've had some a lot of good times in Bearhawks over the years, and the Model 5 looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. Thanks for your time today.
My pleasure, Mark. Thank you.